If you thought the battle with Zamos was going to end that simple with Trunks just stabbing him and cutting him in half with a Spirit Bomb sword, then you'd be wrong, because in this week's episode of Dragon Ball Super, Zen-Oh has arrived in the future that he already resided in. Look, Dragon Ball Super has officially bitch-slapped the space-time continuum. This week's episode marks the end of the Future Trunks arc, and honestly I thought it was pretty satisfying. What is kind of strange is how it all came to an end, because the preview for this episode made it seem as it was all going to end with Trunks finishing off Zamos with his brand new Spirit Bomb sword, which he magically pulled out of his ass. I have no idea how he was able to master a technique like that, not to mention there just weren't a lot of people on the planet to deal that much damage to Zamos. And, actually, they kind of rectified it, because he actually was not destroyed by that technique. In this episode, he displays one of his more destructive abilities, which is to quite literally transform himself into the universe. At least that's what Whis is saying is going on. Basically what happens is that Zamos transforms into this massive storm cloud of death, which wraps itself around the planet, and all of the clouds take the form of Zamos' evil face. Honestly, things have just reached Sailor Moon levels of ridiculousness. The only reason I say that is because this is like the final villain in like every arc of Sailor Moon. Just like a big evil planet-sized face. And it has the ability to fire key beams of blast, destroying everything in its wake, and it even manages to pretty much annihilate every single living human. That's right, Yajirobe was killed! And apparently there's no way to fight this thing either. Goku, Vegeta, and Trunks try to hit it with their signature attacks, Kamehameha, Final Flash, Gallic Gun. None of it works. Even Mai tries firing her shotgun into the sky, which I have to admit it was meant to be taken serious, but I was kind of laughing a little bit. In an act of desperation, Goku is looking in his pocket for a sensu bean when he suddenly comes upon that little device that has the button on it, that when he presses it, Zen-Oh should appear, and it just so happens that there is a Zen-Oh in this universe. I guess he's just been taking a long nap, not realizing that all of the Kaioshin and gods of destruction of his universe have been destroyed, but he conveniently arrives when Goku hits the button, and he seems really flabbergasted at first, like he doesn't know this version of Goku, and Goku just immediately runs up to him and just glomps him, basically, which is really strange, because everybody just expects Zen-Oh to just immediately kill people when you piss him off. But I guess he just really has a thing for Goku. I don't know what it is, maybe it's because they're so simple-minded. And without even blinking, Zen-Oh just decides, yeah, this planet doesn't look like it's worth keeping, and he just decides to destroy it, and everybody escapes back to the present in the time machine. Goku decides to get back in that time machine with Trunks right before he leaves, and they go and see Zen-Oh. And the reason he's doing this is because Goku finally has found someone that Zen-Oh can call his best friend. Another Zen-Oh from another timeline. Goku actually brings the Zen-Oh from the future to meet the Zen-Oh from the past, and of course, they immediately hit it off. This is some weird, time paradoxal bullshit going on right here, and honestly, I think it's kind of hilarious. It's also really strange that we now have two Zen-Ohs who are going to be hanging out with one another. Then, there is another big detail. The fact that the Grand Priest who works under Zen-Oh from the present timeline is the father of Whis and Vados. That's right, the shorter guy. He's actually the father, one of the strongest fighters in the entire universe. I love how in this arc, not only do we get the Future Trunks storyline, but we still keep getting to learn a little bit more about the hierarchy of the gods and their attendance in the series. So the end result is that Trunks' future home has been destroyed, Zamos is dead, and the future is at peace. And Future Trunks and Future Mind need a new home, and that's all going to be possible thanks to Whis, because that's when we get all of this convoluted jargon about time travel and alternate timelines, and Whis claims that apparently they'll be able to go to a future where all of their friends are still alive, Zamos is not going to be a threat, and there might be the possibility of there being two Trunks and two Mais in the same timeline. It's a little frigging ridiculous, but still, it just shows that it's going to end on a nice note. I especially love the scene where both Trunks and Mai are returning to the future in the time machine, and as they're leaving, you see Piccolo and Gohan saying goodbye to them, and you just can't help but feel bad for Trunks because he starts to break down over seeing his old master from the future. What's really sad about it is that Trunks is blaming himself for not being able to protect all of his friends, his family, and all of the people in the future, and had to rely on everyone from the past and the gods of destruction. Yet, Gohan still wishes him luck as he goes back to the the future. It's a scene that just hits you right here, and honestly, I didn't expect it at all, and that's pretty much where this entire arc comes to a close. What's the rundown of this week's episode of Dragon Ball Super? If you weren't satisfied with last week's episode with Trunks suddenly just pulling out a technique that he's never used and just perfects it by killing Zamos, then maybe you'll like this episode, because he technically doesn't defeat him at all. If anything, Zamos was more powerful in this episode when he became the universe, a giant cloud of living death, which, yes, is ridiculous, but it does lead to some pretty crazy imagery. I really loved the look of this form as it was enveloping the entire planet, and when it actually covered it completely, you could see that his face was actually on the Earth itself, emitting all of this dark energy into the universe. I've never seen anything like that in Dragon Ball, so I have to say that at least it is something new. It's just not exactly what I was expecting from the end of this arc at all. It's also very strange to note that none of the main characters are the ones to defeat Zamos. Goku, Vegeta, Trunks, neither of them at all. They just had to sort of fend off his attacks at the end, and even then they really couldn't do anything. It was all Zen-Oh who actually finished off this arc right here, and it makes you realize, man, Goku, you should have hit that button like 20 episodes ago. But then again, that would have just made things way too easy. Zen-Oh's a really funny character, but this was also the first episode we finally got to see a display of his power, and it was okay to say the least. Basically, he just lifts up his arms and destroys everything in his wake. And then, of course, there's the bombshell that the Grand Priest is the father of Whis and Vados. That's a really big detail, and I frankly just can't wait to see what this guy's power is going to be all about. Because even in the past when he was first introduced, Whis made it clear that this guy's like in the top 5 most powerful characters in the series. And Whis is a character who so far has shown no weaknesses whatsoever. He's never been damaged, and he's never really shown like any true fear unless it has to involve dealing with Zen-Oh himself. So the Grand Priest has got to be absolutely destructive in what he's capable of, and as powerful as Zamos and Fusion Zamos were, I don't even think they hold a candle to some of these other characters. They even mentioned that Beerus might not have been able to destroy future Zamos. I call bullshit on that. I have a feeling that Beerus would absolutely wipe the floor with him. Even more so when he actually sort of like fused himself with the planet. Beerus is a god of destruction. He'll just blow that bitch up. So the rules of the Dragon Ball universe have sort of been beaten to bejesus and back, but if you're just willing to take it for what it is and realize that Dragon Ball Super is not Shakespeare, you'll definitely get some entertainment value out of this series. And honestly, I did like this episode right here. I don't think anybody was expecting this, and I don't think anybody could have called it ending this way. Especially with Zamos actually fusing himself with the planet. That's still, it's just the weirdest shit that I think I've seen from Dragon Ball Super. Frankly, I think it's about time that we got to that big universal tournament. I know we have a couple of story arcs which are going to be coming up, some of them a little smaller than others, and I'm interested to see what they're going to do with this brand new arc that's coming up which involves the character of Hit. Apparently, he's been hired to take out Goku in the next couple of episodes, and I wonder who that's going to be. It might actually be Frost trying to get his revenge. Although, it's weird. I can't believe that Hit would actually go through with that, but maybe he's just so dedicated to his job that he'll accept any assassination attempt. And that brings us to the end of the Future Trunks arc, which honestly was pretty good. It definitely broke a lot of rules of the Dragon Ball universe, but that's what Dragon Ball does all the time. It's probably my second favorite arc in the series, with it being followed, of course, by the Grand Tournament between Universe 6 and 7. There were just a lot of really memorable fights from that one. It was a little simpler, but honestly, it just felt just a little more complete in my opinion, despite the fact that it's about the same length. This wasn't a super long arc, and honestly, I'd rather the arcs be about this length than the ones that we saw in the original Dragon Ball Z series where they just go on for way too long. I'm looking at you, Majin Buu arc. That's not to say that I didn't like classic Dragon Ball Z, I absolutely love it, but I do like the brisker storytelling that they are doing in Dragon Ball Super. It just allows us to get to what we want to see the most quicker, which is all of the amazing action and martial arts skills of our favorite characters. And this episode certainly delivered on that, not to mention lots of crazy things going on in the world of gods. This was a good episode of Dragon Ball Super. I really liked it, but it still wasn't perfect. It was kind of confusing with all the time-traveling talk and all that crazy shit, and the ending might not be very satisfying for some viewers. I know a lot of people were not very happy about last week's episode, despite the fact that the animation was pretty freaking solid, but that's just the way I feel about this one. I'm giving it a 4 out of 5. Check it out, Dragon Ball fans. You might see something you like. If any of you did watch this episode, make sure to tell me what you thought about it in the comments section below. Thank you guys again for watching this review. Make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave me a comment or two. I will see you next time. Stay dandy, baby.